Welcome to the Golden Hour, the podcast community where moms and moms-to-be hear stories from other mothers and top experts in the pregnancy and postpartum care field. You can visit goldenhour.fm for more information, resources, and all other episodes. You can also find us at goldenhour.fm on Instagram for comments and questions. Welcome to today's episode of The Golden Hour. I'm your host, Dr. O, and today I am joined by Taylor McKay Smith. Taylor is a Canadian model, photographer, doula, and a passionate women's health advocate. With over a decade of experience as an international fashion model, Taylor has also built a beautiful career behind the lens, capturing motherhood and wellness in her photography. She's a trained wellness counselor through Cornell and a birth doula through the DONA program, and has spoken at events like the Path to Parenthood Summit and co-hosted the Elevate Women's Health Roundtable. Taylor recently co-founded Havens for Moms, a sanctuary for mothers affected by the LA wildfires, and is a co-host of an upcoming podcast herself called The Mother Circle. She lives in Los Angeles by the ocean with her husband and children, and through all her work, she's redefining how we support, see, and celebrate mothers. Welcome, Taylor.
Thank you so much, Dr. O. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so excited to have the honor of interviewing you. We have a mutual colleague, a mutual friend, Molly. And what I've loved about this podcast so far is I started it honestly with the notion that I think a lot of us in healthcare have, which is like, oh, I'm doing this to give back to my patients and my patient community and birthers and women everywhere. But through this experience, I feel like I'm meeting fellow kindred spirits, fellow people who are passionate about women's health and the birthing space. And so it feels so organic that through Molly, who I respect and admire, I now have gotten to know you. And so I'm so excited for the next hour that we're going to have together.
Absolutely. It's so powerful, this community of maternal health workers and supporters. And it really does feel serendipitous when these paths are crossed, and I'm so happy that she introduced us.
Yeah, me too. And so when I think about anyone's journey, there's a beginning, a middle, and the end, if you will. And I think for a lot of us who end up in the maternal health space, it's either there's like a personal passion, something that brings you in. And I know that when you and I got to chat before the podcast, you shared with me your pregnancy and postpartum experience and how that kind of led you to the career and advocacy that you have now. But do you mind sharing with the audience how your pregnancy and postpartum journeys kind of informed who you are and your passion for maternal and women's health?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I started thinking about having children, I felt like I was at a bit of a crossroads with my career and with the desire to start a family and the desire to, continue my career.
Yeah.
And I think that's something a lot of women are faced with, is these kind of competing intentions.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a lot of kind of deep spiritual soul work, if you will,
Yeah.
to try to get really clear about what my intentions were. I felt like there was a lack of purpose in my work as a model. I had been working for over a decade. I had, done a lot of traveling, was still working in Los Angeles, but it just felt like there was such a lack of depth as well as kind of personal agency, because when you're a model, you're under the direction of the photographer, the creative director, the client, your agent, and really you are the face, but you don't have a voice.
Yeah.
And so I knew that was something that, creatively still fulfilled me, but there was definitely something missing, and something missing for quite a long time. So there was this kind of like void in searching for more meaning and purpose. That brought me to learning about birth doulas.
Yeah.
And when I kind of discovered what that job was, I was so curious.
Yeah.
And I found myself watching birth videos and listening to birth stories on podcasts, and really just being so fascinated by this transformation of maiden to mother. And that led me to sign up for a doula training with Donna. And it was a 3-day intensive training, and it felt really life changing.
Yeah, it felt like purpose, right?
It was purpose. It was really learning how to show up and be there for women. And
Hmm.
it's something that I have been able to apply to all women in my life, like how
Yeah.
I'm able to hold space for them. I think just one of the biggest learnings was you don't have to even lay a hand on the birthing mother. You don't have to even open your mouth during that labor if what they really need is just a grounding presence
Mm,
and to be fully seen and heard. That is going to be so powerful for them. And you
yeah.
can do that with just your energy alone.
Mm,
And that really kind of opened my eyes to listening with the ears of the heart and
uh,
really creating the space for a woman to feel seen and heard.
yeah.
And I was able to apply that to my photography work in capturing mothers. Like when you're pregnant, especially, you're so vulnerable. You're so vulnerable in your body. There's so many changes that are occurring in your body. So
Hmm.
before I even had children, I started feeling gravitated towards shooting pregnant women and creating that space for them as a photographer, to really like see them in this transformation and
Yeah.
reflect the beauty that I see back to them, because I think you don't always see it. You need mirrors.
Hmm. Hmm. Taylor, chills all around. There's so many things that rung true to my heart. One of the things I really appreciated that you said was kind of reflecting on creating space, right? When I think about my own journey as an OBGYN, I think about, this intensive training that we have. So to become an OBGYN doctor, you're in, med school for 4 years, you do residency for 4 years. And so by the time you're done, you're a really well-oiled machine, but you're a product of a training center that kind of pumps you through full of knowledge, gives you a lot of excellent skills. But at some point you like lose the humanistic part of you because you just like algorithms, differential diagnosis, right? At least this is me being open and candid about how I felt. And it's really been the years since my training where I've kind of relearned why I became a doctor, relearned what it means to truly care for humans. I always say it's one of the most humbling jobs I could have ever asked to do is a human caring for other humans because we're complex, we're multi-layered. There's no kind of right or wrong way to get and receive care, but it's when I feel like I've done my best job, whether it's seeing a patient in clinic or helping counsel a mom in the hospital who might need a C-section when it was unexpected, and all those delicate spaces, is when I create space. Like when I take myself back, when I'm actually relatively silent and I can just hear someone and hear their needs and hear their concerns and ask questions of curiosity. And so I love that part of what brought you into that doula space and the way that you support your pregnant clients is, I love that you said something like hearing with the heart, right? Like really just the power of not speaking and watching kind of the room around you and getting a sense of what that person needs. I also really appreciate something that you mentioned, and I think I had heard that terminology first actually from our mutual friend and colleague Molly, which is this concept of maiden to mother, maiden to motherhood. It's this epic transformation, right? Like who you are pre baby is very different from the person you are post. And I think that again, I respect my field and I'm so honored for the many people before and after me who have led the way. But so much of OBGYN training is kind of this relatively textbook approach where postpartum as it's defined is it tends to be in healthcare based on like the 6 week period because that's what insurance companies cover. But we all know postpartum is longer than that, right? Postpartum can be years, let alone who you are after you have your child, whether it's the first child, the second, the third. You just are definitively a different person, a new version of yourself, an evolved version of yourself, right? And I think I'm coming to recognize as an OBGYN that our healthcare system as it is doesn't do nearly as much as it should to help support birthers and mothers as they make one of the biggest transitions of their lives. The term for it, which I know you know, is matrescence, right? And I still remember when someone taught me that term, that someone, again being Molly, I'm like, wait, how come more OBGYNs aren't using this? Like, I think I'm one of the few OBGYNs who is constantly now integrating that terminology in her practice and how I speak and in my podcast, because it's not part of our lexicon. It's not part of our dialogue yet. It's very, very common in the mental health space, amongst, psychotherapists and psychologists and psychiatrists. But I just think that more and more of us in the obstetric space, whether it's doctors and midwives, need to kind of own that too, because it means that we're not just limiting our care of birthers and moms postpartum to our 2 visits, right, at 2 weeks and 6 weeks, but it's like a check-in at 3 months, a check-in at 6 months. And even if it doesn't mean it's built into our healthcare system, even if it means like the insurance companies aren't covering it, what can we do to counter that? How can we fight that? And so I really just appreciate that. Hopefully, in this time together, we're going to continue to reemphasize what an epically beautiful, but also incredibly challenging transformation that is, the change of identity, the newness of self, the mourning of an old self, right? There's so many layers to that.
Absolutely. I first just want to acknowledge that the fact that you have such a deep awareness of that transformation is incredible. And I really see you as being such a leader in your field for bringing awareness to, your colleagues and also providing that kind of care to your patients. I think I can really empathize with, like feeling this load, this mental load of carrying all your responsibilities as a doctor and like all of your trainings to, you don't want to miss anything. So you are thinking in that part of your brain and you need to. That's like crucial for your patients, but to be able to like have the bandwidth for the rest of it is also asking a lot of you guys as doctors because that space isn't created for you guys. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really amazing that you are kind of paving the way and, making sure that while you're providing comprehensive medical care, you are taking the other emotional, physiological aspects into consideration. It's
Yeah.
really incredible.
I'm trying my best, but no, I really appreciate you, Taylor. And that's one of the reasons why I always make this joke. I don't have my own human babies yet, but I have my podcast baby. And that's one of the reasons why I birthed this podcast baby, is because I truly do recognize that my 9 to 5 job, if you will, and let's be honest, it's actually like a 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. job. But
Yeah.
my regular job does mean that there are certain limitations to what I do, and that is a-okay. And I think for me, I'm so fortunate that I do have a space like the podcast to still talk about these things and honor my patients in this way, even if the confines of our regular healthcare system don't let us. So thank you for seeing my intention and seeing that not only myself, but I know there's a lot of other OBs out there that we are truly doing our best. Thinking about you, and as you reflect on your experiences as a mother, what were some of the learnings that you have taken when it comes to like that identity shift, right, from maiden to mother?
So I had my first baby during the pandemic. I was
Mm,
pregnant just as the pandemic was starting. And my pregnancy really occurred in isolation and quarantine.
yeah.
And I think now in hindsight, I can see how I didn't get to experience being witnessed in the
Mm,
transformation. So by that, I mean, I didn't have other girlfriends. Like none of my friends really saw me when I was pregnant, apart from, a virtual baby shower and a small little baby shower that happened when it wasn't supposed to because everyone was supposed to be under lockdown, right? So
yeah.
um, I think that, no one is meant to mother alone, and that
Yeah.
journey begins in pregnancy. So I can really see how, my girlfriends didn't see me. I didn't see very much family. And so to not be witnessed during that
Mm,
transformation, I kind of missed out on having my mirrors around me
yeah,
to
the
reflect
mirrors.
back on what they were seeing and just to feel seen in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, And I think, pregnant moms can relate to the first trimester being incredibly lonely because no one really knows you're pregnant yet. You're feeling so sick and your body isn't showing that you're pregnant yet, so no one can really acknowledge it. And that's kind of how my entire pregnancy felt.
Yeah.
Um, but the silver lining of that was that was when I really went inward. That's when I did my training to become a wellness counselor and deepen my practice of holding space for other women. And I worked with an incredible doula. I was in Vancouver while my husband was directing a TV show there. So we also did a move during that time.
Fun.
And that added to that as well. So I worked with a doula friend of mine, Keely Semler, who's here in Los Angeles. Over Zoom, we worked together, and she helped me with hypnobirthing, and she provided me with these guided recordings to listen to. And that really allowed me to just like go inward and create my own little world, connecting with my baby, slowing down. It was difficult to face the kind of physical and worldly limitations that were happening around
Yeah.
me. And I think that's something I was just speaking with a girlfriend about it who's newly pregnant because I posted something saying like slow seasons are for planting seeds. And she
Mm.
was like, "Oh, I really relate to this." And I mentioned, like, in pregnancy and postpartum and in early motherhood, you do have these like physical kind of restrictions that can feel
Mm-hmm.
really limiting.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're able to kind of reframe that and give yourself permission to slow down and go against the hustle culture and
Mm-hmm.
let go of whatever judgments you may have on yourself around like needing to be productive, needing to, excel and progress forward in your career,
Yeah.
and needing to be social and, all the expectations that we have on ourselves. If you're able to kind of let that go and really go inward, I think that you can receive so much inner wisdom and kind of connect to yourself, which I found actually really helped me then in birth and labor,
Yeah.
um, postpartum and early motherhood, to know that like it's okay. I'm not losing that part of myself. That's just on pause right now.
Ooh.
And I can still connect to it when the universe allows for it and when, my baby doesn't need to breastfeed every 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
That part of myself isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Right now, the kind of inner wisdom that I am getting is going to help me later on as well,
Yeah. Oh,
in the
Taylor.
reemergence phase, because after
Yeah.
that kind of slow inward phase of, growing and creating your family, I think there really is this reemergence out of motherhood that can be so
Mm-hmm.
powerful.
Mm-hmm.
All of the skills that you have learned to grow and care for a human or multiple
Yes.
humans and birth your babies, like that is so powerful.
Yes, Taylor. I feel like I grew up going to church, and so I feel like I'm at a church right now, and I'm like, yes, yes, like I'm like gonna like shake a tambourine or something. But no, your words are gonna lift someone up today and tomorrow and many days, right? I think there's so many women who needed to hear that, to recognize that you haven't lost yourself, that there's a power of the pause. There's like, when I was hearing you, I was thinking about hibernation, right?
Yes.
So, bears do this, right? Because there's large mammals and they need to hibernate to kind of keep their energy stores to get through a harsh winter. And there's a part of you that's just hibernating, and that person will emerge. The other imagery that came to me was like this beautiful butterfly coming out of a cocoon, right? I just like, with bright, beautiful wings and like sun raining down, and just like that beautiful butterfly is waiting to emerge and will emerge when it's the right time. And giving yourself grace, like giving yourself
Yes.
love and kindness, to say, I'm in a season. I'm in a season where, yeah, whether it's in that early newborn phase where the sleep cycle has not yet set, and so you're feeding frequently and you're not necessarily getting those sweet 8-hour stretches of sleep yet, or that really fun phase that I have again yet to experience. So I've only birthed podcasts, but I have many friends and patients tell me when your toddler is just finding their voice and they're acting up and
Oh
having
yeah.
a good time with it, right? There's so many phases, and you're still in it, right? That deeper part of you is still there, but she's just waiting for the right time to emerge. And so I love that. I love kind of thinking about not only this 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 evolution is like a new understanding of self, a new self-love, a forgiving of yourself. And I really think there's so many people who need to hear that. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. I think, there I could relate to maybe listening to this and not really being able to see that, like being able to
Hmm.
hear it, but not being able to embody that because you are in the thick of just
Yeah.
survival. And I just want to acknowledge that too. Like I can remember with my firstborn, he he had like an immature digestive system, and
Mm.
so he really struggled with painful gas, and it really kept him awake all night long. And so
Yeah.
sleep was so challenging for him. And it's funny because, like, as they grow up, you can really see how their struggles as they were a newborn really are so aligned with like who they
Oh,
become.
yeah. How
Yeah.
old are your kiddos now, by the way?
2.5 and 4.
Yeah. Yeah. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
And so I struggled so hard because the sleep deprivation was like nothing I expected. I mean, it was I remember my husband bringing him in the morning because he would take him for a couple hours in the morning after I had been awake with him all night long. And then he would take him and give him try and get him to sleep or whatever. And he would bring him into me, and I felt like a zombie. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't, my eyes were so blurry and bleary eyed and heavy. My body was so heavy, I could hardly even hold him. And I felt very delirious because it was
Yeah.
just so intense. And then, we got through that. And the whole time I was like, I don't want to call him a bad sleeper. I don't want to give him a label because, like, maybe he'll internalize that or
Oh,
it'll make it more real or whatever it was. So I'm just going to say he's just having a really hard time and we're just getting through it. And then I had my second, and she slept for the first 2.5 weeks. And I called my midwife and I was like, what's wrong with my baby? Like, she will not wake up. She
yeah.
just sleeps. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the midwife was like, you're really lucky. Just let
Yeah.
it be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as she got older, it was the same thing. She slept through the night.
Yeah.
And I could not believe it. And I was like, oh my gosh, my first baby was a terrible sleeper.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know it because when it's your first, you have nothing to compare it
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
So, like now I look back on myself with so much compassion and love, being like, wow, you were just trying to survive and you did it.
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
amazing because that was not normal. What
Mhm.
you went through was
Yeah.
not normal, and no one should
Yeah.
have to go through that.
I know. I know. No, it is there's a survival mode, right? That you inherently go through, that like mentally and physiologically, you know, you figure it out. I think it also sounds like you have a great teammate, your husband, your partner. And something that you mentioned earlier that I really want to appreciate too is the importance of village. I know that, with your first, you mentioned your doula, with your second, you mentioned your midwife, but I appreciate that the isolation of the pandemic, right? I kind of, part of me wishes I had even started this podcast back then, of
Mhm.
when women and birthers probably felt the most lonely. And it really speaks to the fact that, as you said, we're not meant to do this in isolation, whether it's the mirrors that we need to reflect back to us, or just as a support that we need to lift ourselves up when you have a terrible sleeper or a bad sleeper, and you don't want to necessarily use that labor, but it'd be helpful to someone else to be like, but no, it's true. It's really true. Because I think back to where we were as humans, and this comes up a lot on the podcast with the concept of village, because as a human species, that's actually what we all existed in villages, right? But now we have our big metropolitan cities, our families live far away from us. We are all career driven, and therefore have created these artificial silos socially. And so our now we are trying to figure out how to overcome those barriers by creating services like doula support, which is important, having lactation support, having pelvic PT support, having night nurses, etc. Because these, in my mind, these are all aspects of the natural inherent village that we used to be born into, right? Because when we were in that ancestral village, you're surrounded by so many women, whether it's family members or neighbors, and you learned lactation from age 5 because you were witnessing it, right? Or that elder in your community who had birthed 5 babies before was giving you advice on what to do when you were dealing with incontinence, right? Like it was all just
Mhm.
inherent in that community. And so when I reflect so much, again, in my humility as a human who has the honor of caring for other humans, I reflect that in the maternal health space, we're now just recreating that village. And it's what an honor, what a privilege it is that we've been able to figure it out, that we've been able to create different career paths and people who work in the birth and postpartum space to recreate that for others. And the hope, Taylor, is that we can make that something that's accessible to all people, right? That recognizing that there is a privilege to be able to pay for a doula and to be able to pay for a lactation consultant. And so conversations like this, my hope too, gets to like people of power and policy making who says, yes, like let's make sure insurance covers everything for everyone, because that village is so necessary from conception through pregnancy through postpartum. We need that type of support, right?
Absolutely. And I can remember creating a postpartum plan for myself,
Mm.
um, that had a list of resources on it of, a therapist that specialized in the postpartum period who was also Molly Normand.
Yeah.
And different practitioners that I might need, as well as like a list of friends that I should call to speak with or to go for a walk with, and foods that I might need, in case my family and team needed to refer to that. Just like creating, a blueprint for what my needs might be. And even though I made that for myself, I still found it really difficult when I was so sleep deprived and when everything was so new and you're so exhausted to have even a moment to make the call or call your insurance and find out if that person is in network. And I'm struggling with that now because I've just had surgery for endometriosis. And it's the same thing in my recovery where I need a wide support network.
Yeah.
And I'm, overwhelmed by the different people that I need to look up and research and then find out if they're covered and book the appointment and make the time to do that. Like it is so difficult to do. So
Yeah.
and I recognize that I'm someone who's really fortunate and privileged and has good health care
Yeah.
and should have the access to do those things, yet it still feels very difficult for me. So I can only imagine if you don't have the health care, how challenging that is. And I just want to say that, like, it's really expensive. Like, getting the postpartum care that you need is
Yeah.
ridiculously expensive. And there are so many amazing care providers that don't take insurance. And so it's really unfair because, I can remember like talking with my husband and being like, I need this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, really? Like this is what it costs? Because
Yeah.
having a village in 2025, damn, it's expensive.
Expensive. I'll talk about dollar signs. No, Taylor, like you and I are like on the same wavelength, right? Where there, I feel so torn because I recognize that the 2025 version of the village is a very expensive one. And so there's a part of me that is a dreamer and a forever optimist that hopes that somehow we will figure out, and the we's are you, me, Molly, the other people kind of in this community who are passionate advocates, will figure out a way to create kind of this like this home base, right? This haven that I know you guys have created after wildfires, but this idea of a haven where It's not cost prohibitive. It's not complex, right? For me as an OB, the worst feeling I have, and again, this is why I create this podcast, it was out of my own frustration. The worst feeling I have is when I have a mom who's bleary eyed, exhausted physically, mentally, emotionally. I can see it. And she's talking to me, and it's clear that she has postpartum depression, anxiety, and I want to get her in with a specialist. But in our current care system as it stands, we don't give referrals. Literally, all I can do is I just give her this list, and it's a long list, which is great, but it's also really overwhelming. And I'm telling someone who is like at the like bare threads of what they have remaining to like get themselves out of the house. And I'm saying, hey, here's a list. Here's some therapists. Call your insurance company, find out who takes your insurance. Oh, but by the way, even if that therapist takes your insurance, they actually cap out on how many insured clients will take. So by the time you get in with them, they might actually not take your insurance. And do you have enough in your healthcare budget to pay for these visits out of pocket? But oh, you also need like to get more sleep. You actually need to save some money for that night. Like I feel so inequipped in those moments, and I feel so frustrated and so mad. And so my real dream state is a village that is easily accessible and is at cost, right? That then I don't know what that looks like. Again, I think sometimes some of it will come from policy, some of it will come from like a cultural shift, and many other things outside of us in this conversation. But I think that conversations like this are a small part of it. I think that I have to believe in like the grassroots approach of continuing to kind of push like the status quo and ask for better, because I think we can do so much better to support birthers and their families postpartum. It doesn't need to be this complex, frustrating, costly experience. So let's keep thinking about it. I have to believe that at some point the solution, it's not here right now, but conversations like this I think will eventually hopefully get us there.
I have faith and hope, because as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about all the people that I know who provide the care. This is their mission. Like there are so many people who want to provide this care. So the need is so high, and the amount of people that are in your shoes who are like, I want to provide more as an OB or as a midwife or as a doula, that is there as well. So like there's some big missing pieces, but
Yeah.
I have hope.
Yeah, yes. So I'd like to take a moment to tell you this is my passion project based on years of experience as an OB/GYN doctor. I aim to empower moms and moms-to-be and those in the pregnancy and postpartum care space. If you appreciate what I do, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share with your friends so it can reach more people like you. You can visit goldenhour.fm for more information, resources, and all other episodes. If you have any requests, suggestions, or questions for future episodes, please email me at hello@goldenhour.fm or leave us a comment at goldenhour.fm on Instagram. And something that you shared that I thought was so beautiful, that even before your own pregnancy and postpartum experiences, you wanted to be this mirror to clients as you were a photographer for pregnant persons, and recognizing that physical shift, right? We talked about this identity shift and, seasons of slow and pausing, but identity is multifactorial in that it's the way we see ourselves, both not only mentally but physically. And I think that that's something I talk with my girlfriends who are mothers a lot about, that physical change, that not only when you're pregnant but postpartum, right? There's this like misconception of like the snapback body. I'm putting quotes for those who are listening, which I hate. And social media is a mix of positive and good for me as an OB, but even as a person, in that you see imagery of someone who's like, yeah, 3 months postpartum, look at me, like, and that's not real life either. And I especially can imagine with your experience as a model, there's with this heightened expectation of self-image and beauty, etc. What that made you think about when you reflected on like physical identity shifts. Now, as someone who's been pregnant and postpartum, someone who's also given back as a doula and a photographer, how do you kind of approach either your clients as a doula or your friends and other women in the community when they come to you being really vulnerable about like their physical sense of self that changed in pregnancy and postpartum. I love that analogy you use as being a mirror. What does that look like to reflect other people back to themselves?
That's such a beautiful question. And I love that it's something that you talk to your girlfriends about. I think a big part of it is just acknowledging all of the physical changes that are taking place in their body. So if they're pregnant, it's like going through all of the different things that their body is doing to nourish their baby. And they're literally growing a human.
Yeah.
And how much work that takes, and how all the cells in their body are working to do this. So I think just really giving the time and space to reflect on the actual physical changes that are happening, and then allowing for the space to talk about like how they felt before they had their baby and any challenges that they may have had with their physical identity before, because I think that absolutely it's not going to go away. That's only going to play into how they experience the shifts. So if you had an eating disorder before, or if you had family members that, growing up would comment on your body, or in my case, if you grew up under a microscope of agents measuring you as a model and printing in contracts that if you went up a centimeter, you would be sent home from Japan because you gained weight.
Really?
Yeah. I
Oh,
mean, I've had agents in Paris who would hug me every time I entered the agency to feel if I had gained any fat on my back, or one would come up and pinch the top of my hand to feel if I had any fat on my hands. And
wow.
so everyone has their own experience
Hmm.
of growing into becoming a woman, how they went through puberty, how those changes affected them. That's such a challenging time. And then becoming a young woman and all the judgments that are placed on us from society, and really the internal judgments, the self imposed pressure that we put on ourselves. And then you become pregnant and your body completely changes. It's all
Hmm.
out of your control, and you do not have a say in what is happening. So I think, yeah, firstly, acknowledging, what your body is doing, how incredible that is, giving yourself the grace and the allow yourself to be in awe of yourself for what it is doing.
Hmm.
Then, reflecting on your past and being really honest with yourself or with someone who's supportive in your life. Maybe it's a doula, therapist, friend, mother, whoever, about your journey and
Hmm.
how that might be playing into how you're feeling.
Hmm.
And then I think it's a matter of acceptance. I think that's a huge key piece of that needs to happen before you can even think about, working out in your pregnancy to be fit, or, trying to lose the weight postpartum. I think if you go into those workouts before the acceptance piece, you're going to be
Hmm.
moving your body for the wrong reasons.
So true.
And that's not healthy for your mental health, right? So
Hmm.
if you're working towards the acceptance first of like waking up in the morning and looking in the mirror, maybe when you're pregnant, it's rubbing your belly with love and just infusing some love into your body, smiling at yourself in the mirror, even if it doesn't come naturally,
Yeah.
faking it until you make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when you smile, you can't help but it actually
Yeah.
becomes real,
Yeah.
and buying the clothes that if you can afford it, to buy the clothes that fit you now, where you're at
Hmm.
now. So like don't try and squeeze into the pair of jeans when you're pregnant or in postpartum, because that doesn't feel good in the morning.
Yeah.
Like give yourself permission to have clothes that feel comfortable on your body, that you feel empowered and good in now. And you'll get back into that pair of jeans postpartum, or maybe you won't. Like you might have a new size, and that's okay, because now you are a 2.0 version of yourself as a mother. Like you've gained so much, and maybe you look a little different on the outside. That's okay.
I love that. I think such a big theme of our conversation thus far is yeah, it's about acceptance, it's grace, it's about self-love. I think it's easy to say and so
Mhm.
much harder to actually internalize. And so part of conversations like this and episodes like this is just to be like that voice, like that tiny voice in the back of someone's head, just to say, room to love the new and better version of yourself, right? New and improved. My husband and I have personally not yet embarked on starting our family, as I shared, and don't know if what we will.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I said to him when we kind of were going through our not even a list, but going back and forth as we've talked about our mutual ambivalence and our concerns. Something I appreciate, and I've told him, and I'll say here, is that I think there's a version of me that I haven't met and that I might never meet if I don't become a mother. And I think it's something about evolution. It's something about, when you're challenged and pushed, you are forced to grow in a different way, not only in terms of your sense of self and your understanding of self and an appreciation of like how phenomenal you are. You were so sweet when we started this episode. You were chatting about one of my recent posts about one of my call shifts, and you're like, oh my God, like you did all of that in 12 hours. But like that's amazing to me right now. But there's a version of myself like you, mothering is like a 24/7 job where you do way more than my simple 12-hour shift, right? And so there's a part of me that reflects on that there's a version of me out there who's a more evolved version of me. And also knowing that evolved version of me is going to be humbled. I will be very honest on this show, in that part of my current self identity is I was always an athlete, right? I grew up playing sports. I played rugby in college. I've always been fit. I've always really been proud of that. It's part of my identity, and recognizing that if I ever were to be pregnant, if I was lucky enough to have a healthy pregnancy and delivery and be postpartum, I will physically change in a way that I've never seen myself ever, ever, ever. And what will that mean? And that jolt, is that going to be the hardest thing for me? Is that going to actually become easy? Who knows? And just recognizing that the vulnerability when you shift in such a big way. Like I think about, I'm a very visual person, and my brain is working today because I didn't do this after a night shift, I guess. But I'm thinking about like the plates, right? When we think
Mm-hmm.
about, we live in California, which means we're very earthquake aware, but like there's something always happening under the surface. And like I think about, again, women, moms, birthers, the people who make these epic transitions, like there's something happening under the surface. But then some of the most beautiful landscapes, no, that's okay, some of the most beautiful landscapes that we get to appreciate, if you go to Hawaii, those volcanoes, those mountains, the California coast, that's all earthquakes. That's all what could one would term as something like violent and friction and hard and rough, but the beauty that's created in after. And so like that other side of you, that mom who transitioned, is to me a more beautiful version of yourself, even if it's not someone that you initially recognized, because what happened underneath that created something just so profound. At least what's coming to mind for me right now.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. Like, there's so many beautiful things that you said. What you said about the conversation with your husband is so beautiful and vulnerable and raw. And it, brought me to tears
Mm.
because that is a really incredible thing to just bring up with your partner.
Hmm.
And I also want to acknowledge that, like, you are someone who is working so closely. You are listening to these stories, you are learning. So, are alongside this transformation. And I think with that, you are continuously having your own transformation.
Mm.
So, whether or not you have kids or not, this is something that you are going through, you are experiencing, and obviously changing from. So
Mm.
you are already, I just want to acknowledge that you are already like such an enlightened, beautiful version of yourself,
Oh,
whether you
Taylor.
become a mother or not.
Oh, thank you. You're so
Yeah,
beautiful for saying that. Thank you.
absolutely. And as you were talking, I was just thinking about how our bodies as women are always changing, right?
Hmm.
And we have this crazy idea that we're going to be one size. And that's just absolutely crazy
Yeah.
because we have periods, we have so many we go through menopause,
Yeah.
we birth babies, there are so many changes that happen. We gain weight and we lose weight. Like
Yeah.
we get bloated and
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
retain water. Like, why do we have this pressure on ourselves that we're going to fit into the same pair of jeans?
Yeah.
And so just I think like acknowledging that our bodies are always changing, that when we're going through a change, it is temporary, and we don't know, especially in the first year postpartum, we don't know what our new baseline is going to be, sometimes in the
Mm-hmm.
first 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so giving yourself so much grace during that time. And then I think acknowledging your thoughts as you're having them, just having the awareness of like, oh, wow, I'm being really mean to myself right now.
Yeah.
Or these thoughts are popping up more than usual. And I'm just going to watch them and notice them. I'm not going to judge myself for having the thoughts and add more stress to myself. I'm just going to notice them and say them out loud to someone.
Yeah.
Because I think that is freeing, or putting a pen to paper and writing about it, to let that out of your body and kind of break the cycle of like continuously beating yourself up. For me, I always feel better when I say to my partner or my mom or a friend, like, yeah, I'm just not really feeling like myself right now, or my body is looking really different than it normally does.
Yeah.
And especially to my husband, when I'm like getting dressed in the morning and I
Yeah.
can't find an outfit to wear because nothing feels good physically on my
Yeah.
body. And that absolutely affects how you feel about like when you go out
Yeah.
into the world.
Exactly.
So just like freeing yourself by saying it out loud takes away some of its power. And, if you're lucky, the person that you're with will either just hear you and really listen, or maybe they'll have some kind words or some insight to give you. But yeah, I just want to normalize that having those thoughts are absolutely normal. And what you said about motherhood being so humbling, physically, it is so humbling. I mean, when else in your life do you like push out a baby and then you look in the mirror and you had a bump that was like full and beautiful, and now
Yeah.
it's just like a deflated balloon,
Yeah.
and you're bleeding, and healing, and
Yeah.
like you're looking in the mirror and you don't recognize yourself, and you're in
Yeah.
shock from just giving birth. So there's so many humbling moments that happen. And I think with my first baby, I almost didn't want to look at myself in the mirror. I
Mm.
almost wanted to be like, okay, this is temporary, so I'm just not even really gonna
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it was easier to just kind of look away. And
Yeah.
I didn't want to look at anything. I didn't want to
Yeah.
look at my new vagina. I didn't
Yeah.
look at my balloon stomach, because I was like, okay, well, this is happening, but I'm just going to kind of like put it over here and compartmentalize a little bit, because it was
Yeah.
easier for me to do that. I didn't have the capacity or the bandwidth to really look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And in my set with my second, I was like so grateful to be going through this again, and I really saw the beauty in it, and I had the knowledge to know that like it was all going to change, and it was nothing was permanent, and it changes so quickly that once it's gone, like you almost miss it.
Mm.
And so I really gave myself permission to like look in the mirror afterwards and just like continue to rub my belly,
Yeah.
continue to give myself the love, and like really look at my whole new body and admiration.
Yeah. Yes,
Even the
Taylor.
swollen, engorged boobs, I was like, "This is amazing, and this does not last." Like, these are my dream boobs that I wanted my whole life. They're so painful, but they're here temporarily, and I'm gonna look at them.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, no, I love that. I also love that you are honoring both versions of yourself. I think again for anyone who's listening, it's totally okay to just be like, I can't. This is too different for me. This is too othered for me. I'm not ready. I'm not in a mental emotional space to accept that person. So I'm going to kind of avoid my reflection. I'm not going to inspect my vagina. Like that's totally okay. But I also love the other extreme version of yourself saying like, this might be the last time that my body's going to make this epic transition to bring life into this world, to nourish that life, to birth that life. Like, dude, thank you for giving me the opportunity to nerd out. I'm going to nerd out with you for a second. Like one of the things I love about being an OBGYN is so many things that we already touched on, but like the human body is
Yes.
freaking amazing. And one of the things that highlights it the most for those who have the privilege and ability to carry a pregnancy and birth a child, whether it's vaginal or C-section, is just that, right? Like there's a reason why you have to change so physically. I always tell my patients, like, you're growing a human in you, like, right? Like you are growing a life form in you. And so of course that is going to cause fatigue and nausea and back pain. And then all the pelvic floor symptoms after you have a baby. Well, you held said baby in your pelvis for up to 10 months. And again, vaginal or C-section, you birth a human out of your body. Like, of course, like your vagina doesn't look different. Of course, your abdomen doesn't look different. You did something that are, no offense, but I hope they take offense, our male counterparts can't physically do. And girl, I know my husband, he like gets like a sniffle and he's like, I have a sniffle. The day is done. So the man cold is a real thing. So I'm pretty certain that our male counterparts couldn't even physically handle what we are privileged, and again, those who have the ability to, because I want to definitely acknowledge the women who can't, but to hold a pregnancy and to birth a baby. And so I love that you, in your second pregnancy, looked at those physical changes, looked at your engorged, swollen breasts, looked at your kind of deflated abdomen and your new vagina, and just like paid homage, right? These are all kind of like markings of a warrior, right? Like markings of all the things that your body did. And it's like, it's badges of honor. And so I think that it's just so beautiful to be able to have that physical, you're obviously your beautiful children running around you at 2 and 4 are a daily reminder, but like that physical reminder, right? When you're still in the peak of it, to be like, look what I did. Go me. Like, fuck yeah.
Yes. And there's something to be said about not even really like your priorities shift so much when you have a baby, such that the focus isn't on you as much because you
Mm.
literally don't have the time or the energy to do
Mm-hmm.
that, right? You are like, especially in the newborn phase, you're keeping your baby alive. So, that is kind of a gift, I think, that you can't sit around and be like thinking about your body. And it's perfectly okay and normal to still have those thoughts and go through periods where you really just don't feel good or you don't feel like yourself. But yeah, there's something kind of special about focusing your energy on your baby and
Mm-hmm.
really being careless in that, or not careless, selfless
Mm.
in that way.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I already shared with you kind of my self-reflections that I've shared with my partner as we continue to talk about, starting a family or not. Although
Mhm.
someone did say to me the other day, one of my coworkers who has not parented, she's like, "No, you do have a family. You have family. You just haven't chosen to have kids yet." So I'm going to take that back. Whether or not we choose to have kids, because
Yes.
families look so different, and I want to celebrate that.
Yes.
Anyway, but part of that is recognizing, you don't know me, Taylor, but we're getting to know each other, and I think we're friends already. But I'm naturally a selfish person. I'm really good at protecting self, and so there is something so selfless about motherhood that I'm like, I think I need to learn how to be more selfless. And there's different ways to learn, I know, but yeah, that's one of those things. Anyway, you have been so generous to let me talk about all the things that I think are so, gosh, important and needed to be heard, and people who needed to go to the church of Taylor today, if you will. But I'd love to pay homage to the beautiful things that you've done, especially just in light of the unexpected tragedy of the LA wildfires. Do you mind sharing more about kind of what inspired you to co-create kind of Havens for Mom? What was that experience for you in terms of lifting up the moms of the LA area at that time? And it's ongoing, right? Even though it acutely happened, I know that the rippling effects are still present in LA right now.
Yeah. I think it was a really crazy experience to be in LA when that was
Mm-hmm.
happening. I was actually driving to Malibu with my husband and daughter when the fire started. And we, as we turned right onto Ocean. I can't remember what the street was, but we turned onto the street and saw a huge puff of smoke, and we're driving towards it to Malibu,
Yeah.
and then saw the fire starting in Palisades. And we just stood there on a hill with a bunch of other people watching it. And in the hour that we were there, the fire had grown from 20 acres to, I think it was like 200 acres or something like
Oh,
that.
Oh.
and it was right above our friend's home. So I was calling my friend, and my husband was calling her husband, and we were like, "Are you guys okay?" When we didn't hear from them.
Mm.
And um, I think just like, yeah, there's just something really crazy about seeing the devastation
Yeah.
firsthand and like breathing in the smoke and
Mm.
being so close to it. Those friends of ours lost everything.
Oh, I'm
And
so
they have
sorry.
2 kids the same age as ours, and, they bought that house. It was the anniversary of being in that home for 1 year. It was their first family home that they worked, their
So
whole
hard.
lives for.
Yeah.
And I started volunteering at a friend's store in Santa Monica and was helping people find clothes. And this woman looked really lost, and I came up and asked if there's anything I could help her find, and asked what size she was, and she didn't know what size she was. And I was like,
Mm.
"Oh, okay. Let's look over here together, and we can kind of try and eyeball it." And then she, as she started to kind of trust me, she told me that she just had given birth, and her baby was in the NICU and had been resuscitated. And then when they were released, they found out their home was gone. And they had no home to go back to after giving birth and being in the NICU, which is incredibly traumatizing. And I, as a doula, gave her any resource I could think of, gave her my phone number. I was like, okay, I have maternity clothes that I want to drop off to you. Let's keep in touch. And then when I went home, I just like couldn't sleep. I was like, this is so messed up that there are this vulnerable group of
Mm.
people, mothers in particular, who have just either they've like given birth or they're in postpartum or they have babies or whatever it is. So I, I thought about like the need for this haven, and I called Molly Normand, who is a therapist and has Life After Birth, which supports new moms in the postpartum period. And a lot of people reaching out to her, other therapists saying like, how can we help? What should we do?
Mm-hmm.
And I pitched the idea to her of like creating a space that they could come to that felt calming, that
Mm-hmm.
was had a very different energy than a, an emergency relief center,
Yeah.
that they could be really held in. And what if they could receive some wellness treatments like a massage or acupuncture or sound healing and be cared for by doulas and midwives and all the people that are in our community? Because, we saw that there were so many doulas and midwives offering their free services out of their house, and they were collecting supplies in their garages.
Mm-hmm.
And we also saw that they didn't really have a place to connect with the moms
Yeah.
aside from like Instagram grassroots.
Yeah.
So we pulled together everyone that we could think of. We put a message out on Instagram, and the support just came pouring in. Everyone was like, how can I help? Yes, I want to volunteer my time. Here's some items. I reached out to a company called Pear in Canada. They sent over a huge shipment of brand new baby clothes, and brands like Parallel that I work with sent in their wellness supplies, and it was remarkable. It came together in about a week, maybe less than a week,
Yeah.
and was literally like driving around, picking up boxes of things, doing drop-offs and then picking up more. I've never organized an event like that before, so it was just totally, we were just flying by the seat of our pants,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it all came together so beautifully. And when the moms walked in, we had calming music playing, and we greeted them with so much compassion, and pretty much instantly, they told us their whole story and broke down in tears. And many of them said that it was the first time that they cried about
Mm-hmm.
it because they
Mm-hmm.
were holding it together for their families,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't have the space or privacy to even begin processing the grief and the trauma. And so it was really, really, really special to get to hear their stories, get to hold them, and there were so many beautiful insights. It was a gift to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, what a gift you and Molly and I'm sure all the other contributors were to your community and still are, right? The fact that you had the generosity of spirit, the foresight, that the energy, the compassion, just to say, I need to do something. Like, what can I do? And like, okay, we have less than a week. Let's figure it out, right? And knowing that it wasn't necessarily going to be perfect, but in its imperfection, it was going to be just enough. I can imagine those women who showed up the very first time and were able to just release and release the tears that they had held back because they were trying to be strong for their family members, trying to be a strong face for their young children. I still remember visiting a girlfriend who lives in LA, probably maybe a month or two after the fires. And she was sharing with me that she has 5-year-old twins. And she was sharing with me that they're still affected, right? That one twin will still bring up the fires. We'll talk about nightmares that he's having, right? And what it means. We've talked so much about what it means to be a mother and a woman, and the strength inherently that you do or do not know that you have. But there's so much that it means to be like a stable foundational rock for your family, but you also need to be lifted up. And so I just imagine that haven, that event being that rock, that foundation to let people really kind of start a long healing process. When I think about it, it reminds me of something that I really love, which is centering of pregnancy. Have you ever heard of centering?
Mm-mm.
No, so it's basically group prenatal care. It goes back to what you and I were talking about, the village, right? And the fact that rather than seeing an OB or a midwife for one-on-one visits, like what we really benefit from, and there's actually data that show that you can lower your risk of postpartum depression and actually lower your risk of preterm birth by doing group prenatal care. There's something about group. There's something about community,
Yes.
right? It's no surprise, but I'm imagining again that space where for all these women who up until that point were just like barely hanging on, and the scene, not only the support people around this outer circle, you, Molly, etc., but also just the other women who've gone through their own variations of that same tragic story, and saying, okay, yes, I am here. Here is my sisterhood. Like this is incredibly shitty, but I am not alone. So yeah, again, thank you, Molly, thank you, everyone who partnered. I felt it felt so hard as someone who wasn't physically there, but I think for all of us who live in California, like we all feel connected in some way, and so it felt so hard to feel so far away and not feeling like you could do much, but just so grateful that there were those of you on the ground, so many people on the ground doing so much, and that was your way of contributing.
So many people doing such amazing things. And that is how I felt like inspired to do it, because I watched people who had never done anything like that pivot their businesses. And it was all in the beginning, it was all small businesses and
Mm-hmm.
people in the community that banded together. And there were a lot of people who had lost homes who were volunteering. And
That's
the
amazing.
lesson in that for me was like, if you ever go through a trauma like that, you need to be in community with other people who are experiencing the same thing, which is
Mm-hmm.
exactly what you're talking about with centering.
Yeah.
And to see the kind of strength that they had to show up when they had nothing to offer was just nothing short of a miracle. And Molly and I worked with Mama to Mama, which is an incredible nonprofit, and
Mm.
they connected the moms with free maternal health care.
Mm.
So free postpartum doulas, all of the kind of care that they might
Yeah.
need. And the work that they are continuing to do is incredible. They have kept the moms from that event in
Yeah.
touch and
Yeah.
continue to do events. And it's been really special to continue to have a partnership with them. Recently, I connected them with Parallel again to provide protein powder to mamas on the border.
Mm.
So little things like that, like
Yeah.
continuing that kind of work is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the advocacy will never stop, right? That hopefully, massive, weather events like fires hopefully are going to be relatively infrequent. Although again, we live in California, so fires and earthquakes we know may or may not happen, but it's a trickle ripple effect that will then happen and continues to happen, like the work that mamas and mamas are doing, the fact that you're still leaning on partnerships that you have to help moms along the border. I can envision this like rippling effect that will continue going on and on and on. And I feel so honored to have been connected to someone who's just as motivated and passionate about caring for this incredibly. It's so interesting how something can seem like it's an oxymoron, but it's incredibly like vulnerable and yet like strengthening and empowering moment in someone's life, right? Both can be so true, right? You can still feel, who am I? Where am I? Like, where did the old me go? But also be like, but I am strong and I'm doing this for my family and my baby. And the fact that, in one being, those two entities exist. It's such an honor to care for birthers and moms and those going through that transition. Which brings me to one of my final things I'd love to speak to, which is your own podcast. I birthed the podcast. Sounds like you're birthing a podcast. What inspired you to create your podcast? And yeah, tell us more about it. Where can we find it? When is it? I think you said it's launching this spring. Has it launched already?
Yeah, we're launching this spring. We don't have a specific date because we are both moms with two kids and
That's all you have to say.
period.
Yes.
But it's called The Mother Circle, and I am co-hosting it with Lizzie Liao, who has been the most incredible friend to me. We met in a woman's circle. We sat next to each other, and then we signed up for the same doula training. And I walked in, and she was the first person I saw, and we sat next to each other. And we both didn't have kids yet, but we both felt called to be doulas.
Yeah.
And then we got pregnant at the same time, and we were in the
Whoa.
same women's circle during the pandemic, talking about this weird experience of being pregnant during COVID-19. And then we were in the same postpartum circle, Molly's postpartum circle, virtually, when I was in
Yeah.
Canada and she was in New York and then Spain. And then we called each other, and all of these things were serendipitous.
I was going to
Never
say,
to be in the same, we were also in the same circle facilitator training to learn how to host women's circles and be a facilitator. And so we were obviously naturally drawn to the same things. And then we had our kids, both kids at the same time. And so there were so many parallels, and we called each other during our second pregnancy and had a Zoom. And I had just had a complication in my pregnancy that was super rare called an incarcerated uterus.
oh yeah.
Very
My
rare,
goodness. And very painful.
very painful. Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
thank you. I woke up in the middle of the night and felt like I really needed to pee and I couldn't. And I knew something was wrong. Called my
Yeah.
midwife. She was like, just come to the hospital. We'll just check just in case it's this rare
Yeah.
thing. And then
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, it is the rare thing, and you need to have an emergency procedure manual
Yeah.
lift in the
Yeah.
OR. And yeah, it was definitely traumatizing. And Lizzie was such an amazing support for me. And then we checked in after our births, and I was really lucky to have a unmedicated home birth in the water, which was felt like a miracle after, having that very medical experience in the
Yeah.
hospital.
Yeah.
And I got to share my story with her, and she shared her incredible birth story with me that happened in Spain. And the kind of revelations that we both had about each other's birth
Mm-hmm.
we were able to share with each other, like, really was so supportive.
Yeah.
And our conversations are always just so deep and rich. And yeah, it made me think like we need to share these conversations. And
Yeah.
we both are really lucky to have so many women in our life like you who have so much knowledge, and we wanted to, probably similar to you, we wanted to be able to have create access for
Mm-hmm.
other women to be able to hear these conversations and listen to the wisdom from professionals and
Mm-hmm.
experts in the field
Mm-hmm.
of fertility, pregnancy, and postpartum. And really, I think we both felt like after going through the intense isolation of the pandemic, we just wanted to make sure that other new moms didn't feel alone.
Yeah.
And we really noticed that in this time of information, social media is just, you're just bombarded with like, this
Yeah.
is the best way to parent. And these are all the things that you should not be doing. And this is what you should be doing. And it feels very like unsolicited advice
Hmm.
and judgmental, and like someone is speaking to you or down to you, like they're the expert and you don't know anything.
Hmm.
And so, what we really want to do is allow for moms to follow their own authentic path
Mm.
and empower them to go inward, like what I was talking about
Yeah.
earlier. Learn tools and use those tools to really listen to what it is that you want to do, because we all have our own innate skills from the good and the bad things that have happened to us in our life
Hmm.
that will eventually become our superpowers as we
Hmm.
become moms. So it doesn't work when some expert is telling you like this ABC of what you need to do,
Hmm.
and it doesn't make you feel good. So yeah, we
Yeah.
just really want to create like a calming, real, stripped back conversation about the realities of motherhood, the joys and, the trials and tribulations.
Yeah. The highs and the lows.
Yeah.
No, I can see it already. I'm getting like this like warm feeling. I'm imagining having the opportunity to listen in. And I think you're right. There's so much noise right now, right? There's so much with social media, and it's so hard to kind of push past the noise and find things that are ringing true, that are honoring you and honoring your story. And you're right, that was one of the reasons why I created the podcast as a humble OBGYN here in the San Francisco area, thinking that, okay, I want to be a part of the noise and I want to try to lift up birthers and their families and create realistic conversations, but also empowering conversations. That there's a lot of social media shame and a lot of like, this is the right way. And I don't, I don't actually agree. And so I think it's conversations like this and conversations that you're creating on your podcast that I think will help bring more authenticity and self love to the dialogue. As we wrap this amazing conversation up, because I know that your sweet, sweet family has given you permission to share your time with me for the next couple hours, but they're probably coming back soon. Taylor, you, as I already said jokingly, but honestly, you took us to church. There's so much that you said that was just so amazing and uplifting and so insightful. But any final kind of sage words of advice or wisdom that you want to share for either moms to be or mothers who have the honor of listening to our conversation today?
I think when you said you were talking about social media, and I was thinking, even if you aren't on social media, when you embark on the journey of motherhood, there are well meaning loved ones, family members, friends, and even strangers who will come up to you
Strangers.
and offer their unsolicited advice.
Mm-hmm.
And often it's a projection of their own experience that they went through that's very specific to them. And they are trying to help. And it's more about them. It's not really to do with you. And that can feel really overwhelming when you're pregnant for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
or you're a new mom and you've never done this before. And someone who's older than you who has done it is telling you, like, no, this is the way to do it. And so my advice would be to just like take awareness of that and protect your own energy, create the boundary that advice doesn't, you don't have to take that. um,
Mm-hmm.
so my advice is kind of more like, I don't want to give unsolicited advice. I want
Yeah.
you as a mother to to trust that you know what your baby needs, what your body needs.
Mm-hmm.
You have the ability to ask yourself in the moment, in any challenging moment, what is it that I need right now? Is it a glass of water? A call with a friend? Do I need sunshine on my face for 5 minutes? Do I need to splash some water on my face? Do I need to take a deep breath? And you don't have to take on someone else's projection, because when you're that vulnerable And when you are in the midst of this transformation, those things can kind of rock you sometimes.
Yeah. 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 Oh, Taylor, I appreciate the very polite and kind and very appropriate pushback of, you know what, I actually don't want to give unsolicited advice. My advice is listen to yourself, trust your instincts. That's how I know you're someone who is meant to be in this space, is invested in this space, because it's about, yeah, it's about honoring self. And I appreciate that that's been a constant theme weaved through this wonderful conversation. One of the best chats I've been able to have all week. So thank you. Thanks to your sweet family for sharing you. I'm so grateful for Molly introducing us. I'm so grateful for what I hope to be a continued future friendship and collaboration as a fellow maternal health, maternal wellness advocate. So really appreciate you, Taylor.
It is such an honor to talk with you, Dr. O. And as you mentioned before, this morning, the first video that I saw on my Instagram was a video of you in your car at the end of a very long shift talking about all of the different births that you were involved with and the way that you were able to step in and provide physical and like emotional care for your own patients and patients who you just met in an emergency. And I was just like, whoa, I am in such awe of the way that you show up, the work that you do, and your capacity to host your own podcast while doing all of that. Like I'm just very honored to be in your company.
Taylor, I appreciate you. You are a cheerleader of people. You see people so well, and I'm just grateful to add you to my group of mirrors. I feel lucky to have you reflect that back to me. So thank you again for your time. You're such a kind soul. Really appreciate you. Thank you very much for listening to The Golden Hour, the podcast community where moms and moms to be can hear stories from other mothers and learn from top experts in pregnancy and postpartum care. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share with your friends so we can reach more people like you. You can visit goldenhour.fm for more information, resources, and all other episodes. If you have any requests, questions, or suggestions for future episodes, please email me at hello@goldenhour.fm or leave us a comment at goldenhour.fm on Instagram. Looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Until then, stay golden.